Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good evening. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid. Welcome. I'll be with you for the next hour here on Radio Hamra. Tonight, I want to talk about a concept related to how we avoid pain, or we think that avoiding pain is the best place to be, or the absence of pain is somehow happiness or the goal that we're supposed to seek. Um, and I want to talk about it to describe an analogy that came to my mind related to this, but just this general theme to me is really important because I see it so often that people just think that the best position to be in is the one that feels the best, or at least feels the least bad, or removes the negative feeling. And it's an understandable position, or we can even call it a bias, because in general, it's going to be a good thing. If something hurts, it's not good to go towards it most of the time. If you cannot feel the pain, it's generally better, if you don't know anything else about the situation, to not feel pain compared to feeling pain. And that's also important to make this point, and I might bring it up later as well, that we want to be careful not to go to the other extreme, that it's definitely not that if you're feeling a pain, emotional pain that I'm going to talk about, that's necessarily always a good thing, or the more you feel it's good, or if you feel it for longer, it's good, or anything like that. So, um, I think we always are looking for black and white answers because those are easier to just deal with and live with and make things very simple. But most things in life are not black and white. And here's also another instance of that. So it's not that emotional pain is either good or bad. Feeling it for longer is good or bad, anything like that. It's that we have to look a little bit more deeply to understand what's going on. But neither is it to say that feeling it, not feeling it is a good thing either, which is, I think, a bias that I see and hear a lot. I think it's a general bias. People have that, and also one that gets amplified or put into overdrive with what's out there in pop psychology, what people are looking for. Because what we see on social media in general, but just pop psychology, often it's trying to give people quick fixes and what they want, not necessarily what's the truth, not necessarily what's going to help people the most in the long run, but what people want to feel in the short term and what's going to make them want to come back. And taking away people's pain or trying to make it disappear or telling them that's possible, that's something that almost anyone's going to feel is pleasant and favorable and will draw them towards you, especially when they're feeling down. So, um, as I was saying, it's an understandable position to have. If something hurts, you want to go away from it. That is actually what pain does. It makes us withdraw or go away from whatever it is that's causing pain. A very simple analogy: you put your hand on a hot stove, it hurts. As soon as it hurts, even really before you can process it consciously, you pull your hand away because of that pain. So, again, pain serves a positive purpose in the sense of making us avoid things that are bad for us. But we also know that pain can be part of growth. And going to another black and white, it doesn't mean all pain is growth, but pain is a part of growth. Or we could say that growth almost never, I try to be not absolute, but it really is close to never, but almost never happens without some kind of pain, or at least discomfort, mild at the minimum, but sometimes even more. Um, so let me give you an analogy. Someone goes through a breakup and it hurts. And really, I mean, I don't like to use should a lot, but I think it should hurt if you're going through a breakup after a lengthy relationship, because there should have been some type of attachment formed, emotional attachment formed to your partner. And when you end that, it should hurt to have to detach, almost tear that apart. You're attached and you have to rip it apart. It doesn't just smoothly and gently fall apart. It's a painful thing. And because of this type of bias that we have, most people would think that the best thing is for the person going through the breakup to no longer be sad as soon as possible, or as quickly as possible. Or if there's two people going through a breakup, there's almost a sense that the one who's the least sad or gets happier again the quickest, they kind of win the breakup, or you're doing better than the person who's still sad about it. And again, this is not to say that if you're sad longer, you're definitely doing something right or good or that's better. But to come from that position that less sadness is always beneficial or a good thing, to me, it's a very dangerous type of mindset to have and hurts us a lot. And so, because of this, if you talk to a friend, our thought is generally if they're sad about something, again, we'll just use this breakup example. Our thought is generally, how do I make you feel better the fastest? And if I did make you feel better, I've done something good. And if I didn't, maybe I've even failed or not succeeded, or I might even blame you. Well, I gave you good advice, you're just not taking it, right? So we have this very clear bias that the better thing is to no longer be in any kind of pain or sadness, no matter how soon it is afterwards. And so I've seen people give, reasoning why they're not sad about something, and the reasoning could be so bogus, even immoral. Just doesn't make sense. For so many reasons. But most people's reaction to it, if you say, "Oh, I went through this breakup, but I thought," and you say something that doesn't make sense. Um, People will generate, like, okay, well, if you're feeling good now, then it must have been right. I guess that's okay. Whatever got you there, whatever got you to the position of no longer being in pain, it's a good thing because the ends justify the means. So if you're here and there's no pain, then that's good. And so people think whatever advice I can give you, try to convince you. Oh, are you feeling guilty about something? Okay, let me convince you that you shouldn't feel guilty. Even to the point where people say guilt is a waste of emotion or a waste of time to feel guilty, which I think is nonsense and actually a recipe to become a psychopath if it were that easy. But if you really could do it, it could help you become someone who doesn't care about, hurting people, has no remorse. That's not a good place to be. So, but the feeling is if I could remove your guilt, I'm helping you. And people will want that. You feel guilty. Oh, this doesn't feel good. If someone can kind of convince me that maybe it's not my fault, maybe I didn't really hurt them, we say all sorts of things. We'll say, oh, you know what? Kind of funny, maybe what I'm saying today about people growing, but maybe you're going to help them grow. And so even if you hurt them, maybe that's a good thing. Now, I'm not trying to say that anytime someone feels guilty, there always, is a reason for them to feel guilty. Often people will feel guilty and for things that aren't their responsibility at all, or too much guilt for something they did, or something that's very natural, or something that was an accident, or so many things. So again, making it very clear that there's always nuance to these things. It's not black or white that if you feel guilty, you definitely should, and you definitely did something wrong. Of course not. But to think that if you feel guilty, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what's going on, the best possible thing is for you to not feel guilty anymore and to make that guilt disappear. I don't agree with that because sometimes we do something bad, wrong, something that isn't aligning with our values, who we are, who we want to be. And it's quite healthy to feel guilty and feel bad about that and to work through that guilt to get to a better place rather than try to skip over that and just try to remove the guilt whatever way we can. So I'm just constantly seeing this, people's, social media posts and just in conversation in general, these people that are trying to convince you don't need to feel bad. And people love it. They eat it up. They, are seeking that. And I think it's a very, very unfortunate thing. So, if your friend goes through a breakup, I've used the analogy of almost like homeostasis. You're trying to bring them back. It's understandable. You hear that they're sad and down and feeling, not good, and your instinct or reaction is to try to pull them out of it. Um, and I'm not saying again not to try to help them feel better. In some ways, not to help them, feel, console them, so at least they can manage what they're going through. So, trying to remove their pain completely or tell them they don't need to be sad about it. But you definitely want to support them through it. But we have to be mindful of this strong urge, which we almost all have, to just take away the pain if we can. Can I convince them? People would say, "Oh, I really said I came up with some good points for why they shouldn't be sad." Oh, you don't need to be sad. Most relationships don't work out anyway. Or, oh, if you ended, why are you sad? You shouldn't be sad about it. You ended it, so you should be happy. Or you're going to find someone better. Or you're going to this, making false kind of empty promises. Like you don't know if they're going to find someone better, and that's not even really the issue here. But we just say things. Oh, you're definitely going to find someone. Oh, I know it. I just hear people saying so many things that I get it. It's in a way well intentioned, but I don't like it. To me, actually, never feels good when people give this kind of advice. Where it's like, oh, I know the person, the man or the woman of your dreams is just around the corner waiting for you. I know it. I just feel it. I can. This is what had to happen, and we don't know. No one knows. I mean, yes, we want to be hopeful. We want to try to be open to it, but this kind of like for sure it's going to work out is comforting. But to me, it's a false comfort and a false hope. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but just it's got a guarantee is just something we say and maybe someone believes just because they don't want to feel bad anymore. They don't want to feel sad, but um, and how realistic is it? How important is it for someone to take that in, to internalize that? So I hope as you're listening, maybe you already have thought about this many times before and you're kind of very aware of it. But e- either way, I hope you kind of like recognize this tendency in yourself and others. Because I said it's even I have this, I'm talking about it even as a therapist where we try to process negative feelings, try not to skip over them. I still could feel this strongly, especially in different situations. Might not always be there for everyone every time, but you definitely will feel it because it's just that's the pull. So it feels bad. Let's make them feel better, which is itself I think a positive or healthy mindset. But you want to go a little bit deeper and try to recognize what's going on here. So it's not again they want to push people into their sad feeling or make them feel worse. But I do think when someone is feeling a bad feeling, you're going to have this reaction of like, oh, let me make that feeling good. Let me, somehow cheer them up or convince them they don't need to be sad, mad, whatever the feeling is. Pause and ask yourself, what's going on here? Can there be some value to this feeling? Could there be even something healthy about this feeling? If you have a healthy body, it should feel pain. So, if someone slams your arm with a bat, you should feel pain. If you don't, there's actually something concerning. So um, sometimes when we have a negative emotional response or negative emotion, it's a sign of health, a sign of a responsive emotional body, just like you should have a responsive physical body. Someone gets whacked in the leg with a metal rod and just like doesn't say anything or feel anything, that means something's probably wrong there. There's some kind of nerve damage or something is going on that's not happening. So if someone tells you, I did something, um, that hurt someone, and now what I would say is here gets back to that nuance where it doesn't mean maybe their degree you might not agree with, and that's something. So you could tell them like, I can get that you feel bad about what you did, but how bad you feel. So I get that. So I'm not, again, saying that never try to help someone feel less or take away the bad feeling. As a therapist, I also see lots of people who feel it's in my perspective way too guilty about something that happened or something that they did, and so I'm not trying to tell them, oh, what you did was even wrong at all, or guilt is a waste of emotion, but I will try to get them to see, that maybe they're taking on way too much responsibility here. Even if they did something wrong, maybe there is too much of it. So again, it's not to say we never help someone reduce a negative feeling, but we definitely don't want to make that the goal or to think that no matter what, that's the right thing to do, no matter what we're saying or how we get them there. It's a little bit more complex than that, and that's kind of what I'm saying here. So if someone says they're feeling bad, I can say, oh yeah, you should feel bad. You're a bad person. That's actually more about shame than even guilt or embarrassment or feeling bad. But I say, okay, I can get that you might even feel bad. I could see that. That probably wasn't something you'd like to do or you want to do again, or the kind of person you want to be, to do that thing. To me, that's actually even like a compliment to give someone. If obviously it's genuine that you say, I get that. Like you're not, I know you're not the kind of person that wants to hurt people like that or to say something disrespectful or whatever it is that you did. So I get that. Now again, you might help them not spiral into guilt where they're just, oh, I'm a horrible person. I'm the worst person in the world. They're going, to shame. Shame doesn't actually help us grow ever. We get just stuck in a shame cycle. I mentioned this before. I don't know, it was Andrea Gibson. I think that's their name. But in the poem, I remember they said something like shame is so much shame being lazy or the laziest emotion, the laziest something. And it's kind of striking because it's almost like judging or shaming people who are already feeling shameful. But I think there's something very valuable there because when we feel shameful, because we feel so horrible and it feels like it's so much at the core of who we are, we don't even work on the issue. So if you feel ashamed of how your house looks, you're not going to try to clean up your house. You're going to feel like you're a horrible person and you try to make sure no one sees it ever and avoid that. So shame, unfortunately, actually does. Um, it doesn't motivate change. It makes us think, we're just unchangeable or, there's no hope in change. So we don't even do it. But so again, if someone is telling you they're feeling bad about something, guilty about something they did, for example, as I was sharing this example right now, I actually find it quite meaningful to not just pause. Oh, that's that. Oh, it doesn't matter. Everyone does that. But the things that might come up to say, oh, they probably don't care, or they're okay, or don't worry about it. They're too things that we might take and just like remove their guilt. To me, again, if it's genuine, I think a very kind thing to say to someone, even though it might not make them feel so much better in the moment, is yeah, I can get how you feel bad about what you did there because I know that's not the kind of person that you are and who you'd like to be. And so we're giving them that compliment of this is not who you regularly are. And we all have done bad things. So I think that is true. And we shouldn't, judge ourselves or judge anyone else based on the worst thing they've ever done or the worst things they've ever done because we've all, come to those actions. And eventually we want to get to that point of having compassion for ourselves that we might have done something we don't feel good about or something we think is bad, but we don't have to judge ourselves endlessly or feel shameful. But again, when you feel that urge to give someone the quick advice that they shouldn't feel bad at all, I hope you'll pause a bit and think about, okay, maybe there could be some value in this, or maybe there's something even healthy about this bad feeling, and there can be some learning and growth within this that we don't want to just skip over or remove, that actually would be very, very beneficial. So after the break, I'll continue on this theme of how, although we have a tendency to try to make negative feelings disappear, we want to be careful not to just approach ourselves and other people with that mindset. Let's go to our first commercial break. We'll be right back. So, continuing on the theme that pain is not necessarily a bad thing, or the idea that if you don't feel any pain or bad feeling at all, that is a good thing no matter what gets you there, or if you don't feel it at all in the first place. And I was saying, this comes when we're giving advice to someone, we should recognize that if we're going through it ourselves, and this is maybe you're allowed to, a little bit on the concept that comes up a lot. And to me, a concept or characteristic that is the biggest indicator of mental health, or at least one of the biggest, to me, is distress tolerance. It's why they call it frustration tolerance. I prefer distress because it's not just frustration almost makes it just about frustration, but just essentially how capable are you of tolerating not feeling good, which sometimes is almost sounds counterintuitive when we're thinking of mental health or something like happiness. How could being good at feeling bad be a good thing or be a sign of mental health or a sign of happiness? Well, the reason that's the case is that being human, really being just alive, but being human it will involve feeling bad at sometimes. I mean, not only that, being human and living a good life will involve sometimes putting yourself, or often even putting yourself in positions and situations that don't feel good, because that's what's going to lead to growth and meaning and important things in life. So, and life's ups and downs will hit all of us, physically, emotionally, all sorts of ways, just things happening to us, having good days, bad days, all those kinds of things are just inevitably part of being human. And the better we are able to tolerate not feeling good, the better we can go through life. Because when, let's say sadness hits us, rather than, thinking this is horrible, I have to get away from this, I have to run away from this, this means something bad is happening. I should do anything to make myself feel better, from, drugs, alcohol, connecting or doing something with someone else, shopping, whatever it is, getting some betting, doing something to get some excitement. You feel like you can tolerate it. You won't jump to those more extreme or quick fix type of solutions. So it's actually a big sign of health that when that pain comes, you can tolerate it. For some people, it almost could feel like you're holding your head underwater. And so you're just trying to get back up to the surface, no matter what the cost. If you really feel like you're drowning, then it doesn't matter what you have to do to get yourself, you know, breathing again, get yourself above water. You'll do anything, and you'll, ask for help from anyone and take, whatever it might be, just to get you there. And so for a lot of people, that's how feeling bad can feel. It feels so scary, so intense that there's a sense that you should do anything it takes to get away from that. And so parents can have this feeling themselves, and then they pass that on to their kids. And so we see this, the kid is crying, or baby or kid is upset, and the parent can't tolerate it. They don't have that tolerance for it, and they react with extremely with the intensity of, oh, what do we do? Okay, let's give the kid anything. Let's do whatever we have to do. They're freaking out because I sometimes use this analogy of crisis with, CRYSIS. It's like anytime someone is crying, it's a crisis. It's like this is just, no matter what you have to do, end it. If you have to give the kid something that you don't usually give them, give it to them. If you have to, change their routine, break the rules, do whatever it is, just do whatever you have to do. Give them, food, give them something just to get them to stop crying. And even there, the feeling is, if I just get my kid to stop crying, that has to have been a good thing, no matter what I did, which maybe I'll talk about in a minute too. But just kind of finishing this theme of frustration tolerance, that's not a good thing, because now the kid internalizes the same feeling that, well, first of all, when I feel bad, it makes the people around me feel really bad. Mom and dad are going crazy or seeming really, really unhappy. So that's not good. I should try to hide that. And unfortunately, I'm going to learn that I can't hide it always, or I can't not feel those ways. And so I can feel even shameful about those feelings. But you'll learn that these are really bad things. These feelings are not good. When they come up, it's really scary. When they come up, you got to do whatever it takes to just get rid of them. You don't want to share them with other people, because they're not going to like that. They're going to feel bad if they, see you feeling that way and have to deal with it. So you learn some really, really bad things if you can't tolerate feeling bad. And so there's a difference between wanting to feel bad and, sitting with the parents is obviously not that you want your kid to be sad or upset or not feel good, but you understand it's going to come up and you can tolerate it. That's the important piece. So it's not that you want it. That would be a really bad thing if you want your kid to feel bad. But even though you love them, you understand that that's going to happen. Things will make them feel bad, and you try to get them to see that it's okay when those things happen. Um, I've worked with families, and there's a sense like, well, do you think I want my kid to be depressed or sad? It's like, of course not. I know not. That's not the case. But if you then convey the message that, I almost don't want to even know if you are feeling that way, the analogy that comes to my mind is, if your child had a cold, I don't think most parents say, I want you to hide that from me. So, go cough in the bathroom, pretend like you're okay, don't show any of the symptoms to me. Just, of course, the same thing. Does anyone want their kid to be sick? Of course not. But if your kid is sick, you definitely want to know, right? You'd want to be aware to, be able to help them, be there for them, take care of them, nurture them, even make, adjustments. Okay, they're sick. Maybe we won't go here or there. Let them rest more. Make sure they don't make other people sick. So you'd want to know. Similarly, we have to be able to tolerate them emotionally not feeling good, so that we can, let them tell us those things too, that they're not feeling good, and we can handle that, and and show them that. So to me, a huge gift, parents can give to their children is this tolerance, for negative feelings, this distress tolerance, that I'm okay when you feel not okay. Not like I don't care. Of course I care, and I don't feel, it makes me feel something if you're not feeling okay, but I can handle that feeling. This is always, this concept of being a container, that you can hold on to your own feelings so much that you can also try to hold on to some of their feelings too. Because if I want to be there for someone emotionally, I can't do that if my own emotions are spilling out of me. I can't help contain their feelings. So as a parent, you have to be able to feel your feelings, but be able to contain them, even about your child being upset or sad or crying or whatever it might be. That's the only way you can emotionally be there for them, and hopefully pass that on to them by them seeing your calm, your presence, your ability to handle what they're feeling. They learn that they too can handle their negative emotions. Yes, they don't feel good. The feeling doesn't feel good, but it doesn't last forever. All feelings come and they go. Some might last longer for sure. Some might feel more intense, and that could be tough. But your feeling won't be there forever. And so your feeling is not some bad, scary thing. It's just a thing, a part of life. Sometimes we feel good, sometimes we feel bad, and different feelings come up. We can deal with all of them. So to me, that's a huge thing that parents can give to their kids, and to be aware of that. How much it's something I ask my patients, I ask clients a lot. This sense of, even sometimes I'll to just put it in an easier way. What would it feel like, or if you think as a young kid, to go cry to your mom and to your dad, individually, just to kind of see the different types of feelings that come up. And sometimes it's like, oh, I could never go cry to my mom, my dad, ever. Oh, I would be too scared to, or I think they'd freak out. I think they'd, you know, maybe they'd make me feel bad. Maybe they would like, not want to talk to you, whatever it is. Like lots of things come up. For many people, just this thought of going to your parent with, this emotional need or some emotions feels very scary. It doesn't feel comfortable at all. And you should think as a parent, you don't want that. Again, you don't want your child to feel bad, but you want for them to be able to come to you when they feel bad, and to not feel like they have to hide that or cover that up or make sure you never see it because you don't want to see it or can't handle seeing that. So, something important to think about there when it comes to being there for your kids or how you can help them. One thing I could say on top of that is, so as you think, well, I want to make my kids happy. That is the one of the things most people or parents will say, which is understandable. We have to remember that happy doesn't mean absence of sadness or absence of negative feelings. Feeling good, having a good life will include the negative feelings too. But if we have this sense that if my child is ever sad or upset, that means I'm being a bad parent, that means they're unhappy. That's not true. And really, as I was talking about this theme, as parents and, the stress tolerance and the idea that sometimes feeling bad can be good. Um, what we're doing is we're kind of almost being stuck in the baby phase, because when you have a baby, an infant, yeah, when they're crying, essentially you do want to just take away that pain. And there's usually a pain of, okay, I'm hungry, I'm wet, I need to sleep, I need comfort, some, very clear type of mostly physical. We can say, yes, some of it is also emotional to kind of being held and those things. So there definitely is that as well. But there's generally this very clear sense of the pain does need to be removed. That is good for them to just take away that pain, and initially, especially when they're very, very young. There's no need to teach them to tolerate or anything like that. As they get older, yes, that changes, and that's when I think it starts to get hard. Is that when you have a baby, yes, it's very, very hard to meet all those needs. So I to know what it is, as you think you're meeting all those needs, but the baby's still crying, so it doesn't mean it's easy. But there is a simplicity of, okay, whatever my baby is experiencing, my job is to just try to take that pain, discomfort, whatever it is, away and make them feel okay. But unfortunately, what we do is we carry this over and think this is just the default position for all of life. As parents to our kids, and even with ourselves, there can be some of this sense that feeling bad is always bad. Um, we should always make sure we feel good, and take away those bad feelings. So you have a 5-year-old child, and we can still have that thought that they should never feel bad, or whatever's making them feel bad, we take that away. Oh, you don't like a kid at your school, we're switching your class. You don't like this, we're taking that away. Oh, you don't like what's going on here, let's just remove that negative feeling, whatever the obstacle is or whatever it is, and that makes you feel bad. Let's either take it away or give you what you want to make you not feel bad anymore. But this is not helpful for your child to live like that, to just run away from bad feelings and think they're always a bad thing, to run away from things that make them feel bad or uncomfortable. They don't feel good about a kid in their class. Rather than just let's switch your class, switch your school, the best thing you do is to talk with your child and try to figure out how to work through what's going on. You know, at different ages and different times, they might need more support or involvement from you, but at least to have conversations with them. Okay, what's going on? What are you feeling about this kid? What happened? Let's talk about it. What do you think you can do? Um, Teaching them that conflicts aren't the ends of relationships, that conflicts are not things you run away from, that bad feelings are not things you run away from, that, you can figure this out. We believe in you. We want to help you get through this challenge, this difficult time, but it's something that we have to be afraid of. So unfortunately, we carry forward this, you can call it immature, baby-like mindset that always go away from the negative feelings. If you can take away your own or someone else's negative feelings, it's always a good thing. But it's a very unhealthy position. It leaves us living very, very unfulfilled and unsatisfying lives. And in the last segment, I'm going to get into some of these things about, why it's so bad, but also just putting some other context to the ways we might think about this in a different way. And what do we miss when we try to just remove the pain or eliminate all the pain or sadness that we're feeling? How it actually often isn't the healthiest position for us to be in. So let's go to our last commercial break. We'll be right back. This is the last segment on this topic. So I wanted to share the analogy actually I was going to share at the top of the show to kind of explain what I'm talking about here, another way of thinking about it. The way this, yeah, as I was saying, something hit me sometime this week. This feeling of always wanting to not feel bad and not feel pain and thinking that's a good thing. Oh, you went through a breakup and you're not sad. That's good. Even like a family member died and you're already okay with it. You're so strong. You're not sad. You're not upset. That's good. This happened. You don't feel guilty. That's great. Whatever it is, or even something's happening in the world and you find a way to justify it being okay, and you don't feel sad or bad about it, or feel any compassion for those people. Even let's say you might have compassion, but you don't feel bad at all. We always have this sense that if you don't feel bad, that must be good. And the analogy I was thinking is if you exercise, if you go work out at the gym, and then I see you the next day and you say, "Oh, I'm feeling kind of sore." I'm going to probably say, "Oh, that's good. You had a good workout if you're feeling sore." The absence of that pain wouldn't actually be a good sign. If you said, "Oh, I don't feel sore at all," that's not always a bad thing. These things are complicated, but just thinking of making some ways oversimplified or just simplifying for the analogy. Um, the sense that not feeling pain isn't always a good thing. You actually would likely say, "Oh, like as I said, if you're feeling sore, that is a sign that you worked out hard. You gave yourself a good workout, and that's actually great. That you're feeling sore." And we would want to just like make that soreness disappear and make it go away, or would be better if you never had it. This is actually a sign of you growing. And I think emotionally, the same type of principle can apply. If you go through a breakup, I've even said this before, I hope that, for anyone listening, when you go through a breakup, you do feel sad. To me, that is a sign of a few good things. One, that you were in a relationship you actually cared about. Two, that you actually put yourself or put, your heart and your vulnerability on the line at some level in this relationship. You let yourself get attached to someone. And when it ends, you had a relationship that you cared about and someone you cared about in your life, that it hurts to go through that breakup. So to me, feeling sad after a breakup would be a healthy sign. Again, being aware of the extremes. It doesn't mean if no matter how sad you are, if it was a 2 week relationship and you're devastated to the point where you're so depressed for months and months and months. I'm not saying that's a good sign or you're doing something right. So again, we want to be careful not to go to the extremes or to just think it's black and white. That if I'm saying that somebody's pain is good, that means it's always good. No, that's obviously not going to be true. But this mindset that it's always better to not feel pain, or the faster that pain is removed, to me is not the right way to think about these things. And I've even seen this with research that's done, at universities, and they've looked at things like breakup or grief, and how quickly is the person okay, or how quickly does the person report um, that their mood is back to normal or as good as it was before or higher or whatever it is. Often that's the way they measure good healing, or good um, grief, or good, whatever you want to call it, doing well after a breakup, is how quickly was the person no longer sad or feeling good. And again, I can get that. It's not to say that's nothing. That can have value. And as I was saying, these things are not black and white, and people could get extremely depressed after going through something really hard, and that could hurt them and how they take care of themselves in so many ways, including to the point of possibly harming themselves. So I'm not saying there's no value in making people feel better, or that it's always good to feel bad, or that there's no risks of feeling bad, or that it's always this good thing. That would be, I think, irresponsible to make that kind of a claim, and I definitely don't. Um, But the idea that people going through a breakup, we should always want to see how quickly they feel good again as being, you know, a sign of strength or the beneficial thing to me is not necessarily the best way to look at these things, or it's more complex than that. Yes, how much negative emotion, how does that change, evolve would be something to look at. But there's other things to look at too. And so, this analogy of if you don't feel sore, that's not a good thing necessarily. And sometimes feeling sore after going through a workout is a sign of something good. Feeling emotionally sore after life experiences can also be a sign of that you're growing or that growth can happen here. And that can be really important. And that's something else that we can miss if we think that the only goal is to remove the negative feelings. You're sad after a breakup, let's just get rid of the sadness. Um, I think that's a really bad mindset to have. To begin with, going through sadness itself can be learning and growing. I mean, it obviously can make us connect to other people's pain more, something I've talked about a lot. So we can become more empathic and have more capacity to have compassion and concern and care and empathy for other people. But just going through it ourselves, we experience different things. We connect to ourselves in certain ways that we can't always do unless we experience those types of things. So even there can be not just in this romanticized way that feeling sad is so good or anything like that, but there are definitely things we learn and grow through the experience of pain and emotional feelings. But also, this notion of let's just, remove the pain as quickly as possible. You go through a breakup, oh, forget about it, move on, don't think about it, be with someone else or do something else or do drugs or drink or whatever it is, that we might do to try to quickly take that pain away. To me, another huge problem with that type of approach is we're going to skip over all the potential learning that could come through this experience. Um, the breakup might be a great analogy for this or example for this because there's a lot we can learn through breakups. From beginning to end, how did I choose this person, that I was with? How did I choose to even make it something? We started dating, and how did I make it go from or be part of the process, with the other person to go from just something casual to something more serious or whatever it is. What did I do during the relationship that I feel good, bad about all those kinds of things, not just bad if it didn't work out. Maybe there's good things. What do I think about the person I chose and what's good, bad there? Were there qualities that I liked about them that I wanted a future partner, qualities I don't want? Were there red flags that I seem to ignore that I want to be aware of? Maybe there's some reason why I ignored them. Was this person like my, mom, dad, people from my past? And maybe there's something I was getting close to and, or trying to get close to from my past or reconnect with or all those kinds of things. And then how did the relationship go? What was my part in that? Was it toxic? Was it good? How did we handle conflict? Disagreements, like how was that? And also, sh- depending on, you could have been the one who initiated the breakup or been part of it, whatever it is. But, did I ignore problems for too long? Did I stay in it for too long? I think so many people have had the experience of staying in a relationship way too long or realizing that, they were both avoiding talking about things, or really facing the reality that it wasn't working out. And so they, stayed together much longer than they should have. Or, maybe I ended things and I made a mistake. Obviously, that'd be a very painful, regretful feeling to have. But if it's the truth, you wouldn't want to ignore that because you can learn from that. Maybe you avoided the closeness, avoided that this could become the real thing. All sorts of things. I know I kind of almost went into a lot of detail there, but to me, it's just to give you a glimpse of, in my opinion, how much we can learn from um, our significant life experiences, especially relationships, but that we would skip over if we try to just remove all the bad feelings or just make ourselves feel okay and move on. The idea of moving on being the goal, being happy again being the goal, dating someone new being the goal. I think those are shallow or at least limited goals to have, or can definitely be short sighted and not as full or give you the full picture as would be the case if you were to really go into all the feelings that are coming up for you. And it wouldn't just be sadness, there could be guilt, there could be relief, maybe, all sorts of stuff could come up for you that you want to be in touch with. But if you try to avoid the bad feelings, you won't let yourself feel even the complexity of things. You would think the only goal is to get rid of anything that doesn't feel good and come to some kind of a positive conclusion. I kind of alluded to at some point earlier today. Another manifestation of this that I see is the way that people respond to what happens in the world. That we hear about some kind of tragedy, whether it's something new, something that's ongoing. I just saw some footage of this earthquake in Colombia, and it looked really, really horrible. So I'm hoping the best for the people there. I really don't know almost anything. I just saw headlines and some images. So I'll have to see more of what is going on, what the damage is, and the lives. Hopefully, not lives lost, but the human toll, or the toll is taken on human beings there in Colombia. Um, but the way we respond to what's going on in the world, we often can have the same type of mindset that if something's happening and then someone gives us their reason of like, oh, I thought about the children suffering here and whatever the situation is. I thought, some kids, just not everyone can have everything, or maybe that's going to make these kids tougher, or oh yeah, if those people are facing that problem, and then their kids are having this problem, so those parents made a mistake and that's just what happens. And I mean, to me, these are very immature as far as their logic, even, I would say. That, for example, that the kids are suffering. Because I hear this a lot, even kids in America, we have children facing homelessness in a country like the United States, which is a very wealthy country, which to me is just outrageous. It's not acceptable. And um, does not have to be, should not be that way at all. But people can just, oh, the parents, they shouldn't have had the kids. The parents, they're making bad decisions. But I mean, how can you justify a child suffering in some way? I mean, can you really think they're in any way responsible for what they go through? Also, just assuming that people in poverty all choose to be that way or made bad choices is also not reflective of the reality. But I think we can even, in a simpler argument, where we look at the children who are suffering, that it's really hard, I think, to justify that um, they're suffering, or that they in any way deserve to be suffering, or are responsible or to blame for their suffering. I think that's just ridiculous. But if you hear someone say this, they say, "Yeah, I saw some kids that were on the street, and I got sad for a little bit, but then I told myself, you know what?" And they give one of these kind of explanations. Most people, most time, will say, "Oh, okay, oh, good," because there is this sense that if you now feel okay, if you no longer feel sad, if you're at the position of not being in pain, then that's a good thing. You did a good thing, whatever it was. Again, the ends justify the means. So whatever kind of mental and emotional gymnastics you had to go through to get yourself to this position, if you're feeling good now, I'm not going to mess with that, and I'm not. I'm gonna. You did a good thing. Maybe I can hopefully do that, and we might even look to that. But I always think that if you see human suffering, the healthy response is to feel bad, to feel pain, to feel upset about it, and then to feel compassion for those victims or whoever is going through that suffering. That is the healthier position, even though it doesn't feel as good as justifying it some way, or um, coming up with some kind of explanation that makes their suffering okay, or their fault, or something you don't need to feel bad about. The analogy I really like for this is, if you walk into a smoke-filled room, you should cough or have it affects your breathing in a way that doesn't feel good. But if you are uh, you know, someone who's addicted to smoking, you might not have that reaction. You can walk into a room full of cigarette smoke, and it actually will feel good for you, or you'll feel, good feeling, and might not cough or have a reaction. But that's a sign of lack of health. It's not a sign of strength. It's a sign of addiction, that you've gotten your body addicted to some uh, hazardous chemical, to the point that not having it makes you feel bad, and it's feeling, being in contact with it actually feels quite good, enjoyable, and not painful. But a healthy response to that toxic substance is eyes watering, coughing, whatever it might be, but rejecting it, pushing it away. And so I think also, when we see negative things happening in the world, although it can be tough, because if we're being real, there is always suffering going on in the world. And that can bring up its own, I think, challenges, really. Or I think there are challenges of how do you balance being connected to the pain of the world, doing something about it, which is very important, and then also at the same time living your own life. Or I don't think maybe you have to even split them as separate things that should be part of your life. But there is some sense of at times you have to be able to not only think about the problems of the world and focus on the problems of your own life or the problems of the people that you have to care about and take care of. As a parent, I could feel that where um, I could connect to the world and think about things and feel things, but I have to be able to be there for my son too. I can't ignore that. That is my absolute responsibility to be there. But I do think we want to be aware of this tendency to think that no pain is the best position, to think of removing, reducing our own or someone else's pain is always a good thing when we're talking about our feelings, and how this is often a very unhealthy thing, that it could take us to places that are, I would say, immoral even, when it comes to looking at things around the world, but also takes away our own ability to experience life, to experience the good things of life, and also to grow through the experiences of our life. So feeling bad is definitely not always a good thing, but we want to make sure we don't always think that it's a bad thing either. Sometimes that pain is kind of like an emotional soreness that is where the growth happens if we go into it and not just avoid it or try to numb ourselves away from it. All right, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. A big thank you to Ghazal in studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee, Free Iran.